Bless you. Good morning. So, how was your week? I am Reverend Dr. Mark Boyea, the minister here at First Parish Church Congregational in beautiful Manchester by the Sea, Massachusetts. And it is once again my privilege and pleasure to welcome you, whether you are here in person or watching from elsewhere, to our spiritual community's weekly time of remembrance and reflection and recommitment to God and God's ways as best expressed for us in the Christian spiritual tradition through the life of Jesus of Nazareth. First Parish Church Congregational, the congregational part of our name, signifying our long-standing tradition within Christianity of democratic governance and the full equality of all members of the spiritual community to participate in its life and work, which means that I welcome you here again, whether you are in person or watching from elsewhere, to a place where no matter who you are or where you are on your life or spiritual journey, you are fully, completely welcome. A couple of adjustments to this morning's bulletin. In the spot where you see a stewardship reflection from Betsy Nicholas, Mary Ellen Cook is going to speak for a couple of moments in that spot. And taking my place during the message time this morning will be Betsy Nicholas. After some conversations this week, we really felt that Betsy's stewardship reflection, the message behind it, was so important, so powerful, so meaningful, that it would be a good idea for her to take my spot today. So we welcome that. So with those adjustments in place, I now invite you to stand and join in the singing of this morning's opening hymn, God our Author and Creator. It is printed in your bulletin. I invite you to remain standing and join me in this morning's opening litany. Blessed is the one who created all things. Blessed is the one who is the source of all our gifts and talents. Blessed is the one who stands with us in our times of need. May we be the people and the spiritual community the Holy One believes we can be. I invite you to please be seated.
Good morning. I'd just like to say a couple of words about our first piece of music. 6 short piano pieces by Arnold Schoenberg, a composer whose music pretty much occupied the first half of the 20th century and really became known as a pioneer in modernism. Some people will call it abstract expressionism, which is a term usually used for late 19th century painters like Kandinsky and Klimt. But his music, this piece particularly, was written 110 years ago, and yet to our ears probably sounds pretty fresh. Schoenberg once described composing music as the realization of one's fantasies and nightmares in music. And he lived in a nightmare world, a world where World War I was about to begin, and there was a lot of disruption in the world. And his music at times challenges one, but also reflects the time that we lived in. These particular pieces I find very coloristic and kind of entertaining in a way, and I thought maybe on All Hallows Eve would be a good choice.
I didn't know when Herman was ending on that piece. It's a little tricky, Herman. Good morning, everybody. I'm Mary Ellen Cook, co-chair of the Stewardship Committee with David Lumsden and our other person on our committee, Chip Price. I'm here today to say the theme, which is printed in your bulletin, that Mark chose and we discussed and decided was perfect for this time, is we are about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you perceive it? We call this the season of generosity in most churches because it's a time to reflect on your life and your blessings, your times, your talents, your treasures. And there's Thanksgiving and Christmas and families and friends. So it's a perfect time to do our annual fund drive. But I'm not going to speak really about the annual fund drive. Sorry, John Round. That's not why I'm up here. We all have our treasures. As co-chair of the Stewardship Committee, I was dragged into this position years ago by Bruce Warren and kind of Paul Godonis, I want to say. He was my predecessor. And I'm not big on asking for money and things like that. But I ended up thinking maybe I'm the perfect person for the job because of that. So I feel privileged to be in this position because over the years, people have come to me with their dreams. Come to me and said, what can I do when I die to leave things to this church? What can I do when I'm alive to see what my donations will do? And that's how we got things like the piano, the outside of the church painted, new bathrooms, the chapel renovation, people who had dreams that they wanted to see while they were alive. So I've been able to hear those types of things, so I feel privileged with that. But besides treasures, it's also about time and about talents. And there are so many things in this church that you can belong to. And at the beginning when you join the church, you might think, oh, I don't want to be on a committee. But it's more than being on a committee. It's about the people you're with. It's about your passions. It's about helping others and having a purpose for God. And I think the people I look out here, we've been on many committees together, and it's enriched all of our lives. So think about if one of your dreams is, gee, I love to read books, but I've never been in a book group. You might want to try the book group. I really would love to learn to knit. I'm afraid of that. Then join the knitting group. Try it out. There's so many things that you could be a part of in this church to make your life more enriching. So one of my dreams, very few of you know, was to join the choir. 40 years I've wanted to join the choir, just so you know. And my last time singing with a group was in high school. So that was a long time ago. But I've always sat here and listened to the wonderful music and said, I want to do this. But had a million excuses. Too busy, my job, my kids, my husband, too much going on, family. So I've always put it off and put it off and put it off. So finally, when I decided this was the year, and some of you know why this was the year, the Parkers know. I did this for Shirley Wilkinson, who was a longtime choir member. I had a deal with God that when one of these wonderful women that were here for years died, I would join. Well, she died this summer. So Shirley, this was for you. And when I told my support group I was joining, the reactions were, my husband Jerry, are you trying to get away from me? First reaction, always a sense of humor. My friend Jane, do you want to say that again? Tell me again what you're going to do? And Allison, I think, said, really? So, really, I think that was it. But anyway, I want to say I've joined the choir. And in 1 month, I cannot believe how much joy it's brought me, how these wonderful, quirky, musical people are making my life richer. And the music I'm humming and singing all week has made my life so much better. So my word to you, virtually and in the church, is, what are you waiting for?
As we come to this morning's time of prayer for our spiritual community, I again ask you to hold in your hearts and minds and spirits all healthcare workers and scientists, all first responders, all those who continue to work so diligently throughout this nation and the world to alleviate the effects of COVID-19. On a more personal level, in terms of first responders and healthcare workers, I would like to offer a prayer of enormous gratitude to the surgeons and nurses and the entire hospital staff at Beverly Hospital for all that they did for me and for Cindy this past week. As I listened to you last Sunday, Paul, talk about all you were grateful for and the care that you received at Beverly Hospital, this is literally the truth. I stood here thinking, wow, that sounds like a great hospital if I ever need one. So, I ask you to continue to hold in your hearts and minds and spirits all those who continue to contract and suffer from COVID-19 here and throughout the world. I ask you to keep in mind and be grateful for the fact that this past Friday was International Religious Freedom Day, something that, of course, is vital to our tradition. As Lely reminded me earlier this morning, this is the 400th anniversary of the Mayflower. And, of course, that is a major reason why those people came here, was for religious freedom. They are our ancestors, our spiritual ancestors, and particularly in the Congregational Christian tradition. And that will also be part of what takes place next Sunday. Please don't miss next Sunday. We have a special presentation, the Mayflower in 1620, that Lely is responsible for having put together. And it is a spoken word and music presentation that the choir is intimately involved in presenting. So please don't miss that next week. I also ask you to hold in your hearts and minds and spirits, while we do not think of them necessarily as frontline workers or first responders, airline attendants. This past week on a flight from New York to Los Angeles, a flight attendant was punched in the face, suffering several broken bones, just the latest in what has been a significant increase in aggression toward flight personnel over the last year plus. And so we hold those people in our prayers because of the vital service that they provide us. I ask you to hold in your hearts and minds and spirits a very close friend of Cindy and mine, Charlie Francios. Charlie is undergoing heart surgery this coming Friday down in New Jersey. Closer to home, I ask you to continue to hold in your hearts and minds and spirits Fran Bachman as he continues his recovery at home. Al Ireton, as he continues with his health struggles. Sheila Kafer, as she continues her recovery at Ledgewood. And then lastly, I also ask you to offer a prayer of gratitude, and I know this isn't the first time we've done this, but for Nancy Claybart. Just know, again, under the circumstances of this past week, I made one phone call, Nancy Claybart. And Nancy took it from there, and she made sure everything was ready. Normally, she gets the first draft of the bulletin from me on Wednesday. That didn't happen until Friday morning. She patiently waited and just did whatever needed to be done, as usual, with Nancy. And so I want to make sure to express that to you again today. Are there any other joys and concerns, any prayer intentions you would like to add this day? Yeah, hi, Christiana.
I would like to ask for prayers for my cousin Birgit in Germany. She suffers from multiple sorts of cancers, had a pretty good year of quality of life, but now it is deteriorating. So thank you.
And her name again, Christiana?
Birgit.
Thank you. Are there others? Marty?
Our daughter-in-law, Victoria, she's just going through a lot.
Okay. Bethany?
I know you mentioned that Jan's here with us and she's got family, and I just wanted us all to welcome them and support Jan.
Thank you. welcome to you. Our hearts and our prayers are with you. Are there any others? All right, then with all that, I invite you now to offer any other prayer intentions you might have, any other joys and concerns that you did not wish to share publicly. Let us offer those now up to our God in the silence of our hearts and minds as we listen to Dr. Weiss play. Thank you, Herman. I invite you to join me in prayer. We so often ask you for the little things. Excuse me. We so often ask you for the little things, Holy One. And instead you say, how about I give you fullness of life? We ask you for a small drink and you say, how about I give you fullness of life instead? We ask you for less stress and you say, how about I give you fullness of life instead? We ask you for more stuff and you say, how about I give you fullness of life instead? We ask you for a single answer and you say, how about I give you fullness of life instead? How about fullness of life instead, you say? How about peace of mind and heart? How about courage and compassion, strength and spirit? No matter how much you have or don't, no matter what you want or hope for, no matter where you are or where you go. How about that instead? How about fullness of life instead? Because that I will give you. And so help us to say yes, Holy One. Say yes to you and say yes to that fullness of life together. Help us to say yes in the words our brother and teacher and leader Jesus gave us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Good morning. Today's reading is from Mark chapter 12, verses 28 through 34. One of the scribes came near and heard some religious leaders, Jesus, disputing with one another. And seeing that Jesus answered them well, the scribe asked Jesus, "Which commandment is the first of all?" Jesus answered, "The first is, 'Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength.' The second is, 'You shall love your neighbor as yourself.' There is no other commandment greater than these." Then the scribe said to Jesus, "You are right, teacher. You have truly said that the Lord our God is one, and besides him there is no other. And to love the Lord with all the heart and with all the understanding and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself. This is much more important than whole burnt offerings and sacrifices." When Jesus heard and saw that the scribe had answered wisely, he said to the scribe, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." After that, no one answered to ask Jesus any questions.
Good morning. Is this mic? Oh, it is. You've heard it said that church is for sinners. With that in mind, I'm sure you're wondering why I'm going to church. Well, I can give you the easy answers. I grew up in this church. I sat in the pew next to my mother, right over there, and my siblings. I had a pencil. I colored in all the O's in the bulletin. I turned around when the anthem started to watch the choir. My dad was just up there. My Uncle Ted was next to him. My Aunt Bobby was over there in the ladies' section. I could name everyone in the choir and everyone in the congregation, too. When I was older, I sang in the junior choir down here with Bernice Lipset rapping up there on the organ to get our attention. I got my first paying job through Sheila's dad, Bill Emsley, working at Chapman's Greenhouse in Beverly Farms. I can still hear Bill and Annie Emsley's beautiful Scottish brogue. As a teen, I was shy. And when I went to church events without my parents or my family, I clung to Truth and Carl Nickerson, Nicholas Nickerson. It was okay because our last names were similar. It made sense to me at the time, and they were so welcoming, as was everyone. I went to Sunday school. I had Vin Terrell, Bert and Ann Allen as teachers. Some of the kids I graduated high school with, like Darv's son, Jeff, I went to school with 6 days a week since preschool. I could say I went to church because I was born and brought up in this church. But so what? Why almost 60 years later do I come to church, to this church? Because that's what I did last week, last year, 50 years ago? Well, Mark, you've let it be known that October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Did you guys know it's also National Bullying Prevention Month, Emotional Wellness Month, Self-Promotion Month, I'm Just Me Because Month? And Mary Ellen, you asked me to come up here in October. So I started writing. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. I wrote out my dilemma to Mark. I said, Mark, I've got 5 pages here. And I was hoping he would say, okay, that's cool. Cut it down to a couple of paragraphs, 3 minutes, there you go, whee! And instead he said, Betsy, you've been called. You need to do this. I wanted to pull a Jonah and get in one of those boats, but by golly, we had the wrong weather for it this week, didn't we? So here we go. I got my degree as an occupational therapist in 1985, and in the early 1990s, I began an adventure by moving out west for 5 years with my fiancé, who became my husband several years later. We were married in this church, and I loved many things about New Mexico. Unfortunately, my marriage deteriorated over time, but I didn't see it, or at least I didn't admit it. I didn't admit that his dismissiveness of me, his character assassination of me, his refusal to own his own behaviors, and his verbal emotional abuse were affecting me, making me afraid to be me. He disparaged my interest in art and handwork. Look, I made this bench without any metal. It's just wooden pegs. It looks flimsy, and look, it's uneven here. I bet it would break if I sat on it. If I sang when I was in the house or the car, he'd turn up the stereo and put on music really loudly. "You're off key," he said. I stopped singing. "Look at this art I'm making. Look, I'm making a quilt." Well, that's not really art. It's just pieces of fabric put together. It's not even finished. I didn't admit that his belittling pet names for me were abusive. He called me a cleaning Nazi because I enjoy vacuuming, mowing the lawn, washing dishes. It was something good for my family that I could do, so I did it, or at least I tried to. That's what a good wife and mother does, right? I didn't admit that I was exhausted trying to do all these things all the time. I didn't admit that derogatory public statements about me were not terms of endearment. They were abusive. How many times have I heard that I remember 2% while he remembers the other 98%? He used to call me 2%. When I told him my feelings were hurt, I was labeled as overly sensitive. Really? How about just sensitive? Or maybe it's that I'm not insensitive. As a coping technique, I learned to not speak up for myself or to complain, as he put it. I made excuses. He's busy. He's tired. He didn't sleep well last night. I believed that his dissatisfaction, his unhappiness, his deteriorating health, and ultimately his anger was certainly my fault. I lost friends and family connections in an effort to make him happy. I lost these relationships because these people saw and were uncomfortable with what I refused to believe, refused to admit. They tried to help me understand, but I thought I knew better. I later learned that he was a master at gaslighting, which is a technique that is used consciously or subconsciously by abusive people to get others to question their reality. He would tell me that things certainly did or didn't happen the way I remembered them. Oh, that 2% memory. After decades together, he knew all the buttons to push, and he threatened to take the children away if ever I left him. He threatened that I would never see them again, and I believed him. So I was afraid to speak up, to speak out. Even after I began the scary, daunting, reality-questioning process of admitting that things were not okay, I was afraid. I was so afraid. Until I wasn't. Slowly, that light awakened in me. A little something blossomed. I had a very few steadfast friends from work, from my karate dojo. I got my black belt at age 49. Throughout this entire journey, I had the unwavering support from my parents and my sisters. Daily contact with them frequently staved off anxiety attacks and helped me to keep perspective. Finally, I could say a few things. I could ask a few questions. Well, that snowballed into more questionings, and it devolved into anger. So I tried anger. I tried to talk to him the way he talked to me. I yelled, I belittled, I blamed. Why did he get to hurt my feelings, dismiss my accomplishments for the house, for the yard, for the family income? Why is everything that goes wrong my fault? Or everyone else's fault but yours? Why do you get to lie on the couch all day watching movies and playing video games while I'm bringing in all the income, taking care of the children, doing all the housework and all the garden and lawn care? Why are the things that are important to me not worthy of your acknowledgement? Why do you get to hurt people's feelings and call it joking? This mess can't be all my fault. Can't you see? There's something terribly wrong with our family. I kicked a hole in the wall of my kitchen. Twice. After my nervous breakdown and subsequent therapy, both of which he denies happened, I realized a few things. Angry outbursts wouldn't work, ever. He was the master at that, not me. I was the newbie. But I tried it, and it's called reactive abuse. Was it the right way to handle the situation? Nope. But it was the only way I knew at the time to try to get him to stop and see how hurtful and irresponsible he was. I finally admitted some things. First of all, I needed to get out. But where could I go? As with many other young adults like me in my 50s, I turned to my parents. And I'm so blessed that they were welcoming of me. Hi, Dad. I begged my children to join me. My son did. My oldest daughter. My oldest daughter was entering her senior year in high school, and she was close to earning her associate's degree as well. She felt she could weather that toxic home environment for a few more months, and she had and still has several very stable, alternate family, healthy family supports. So she stayed in New Mexico. My youngest was 14, and in New Mexico, 14 is old enough for a child to determine where she wants to live. She didn't want to move away from what was familiar, from her friends, not with a mother who would insist on limits, guidelines, supervision, boundaries. Not with a mother she was led to believe was mentally unstable and needed therapy. I had no recourse but to leave her. Yeah, you were right. I did need tissues. So in 2017, I ended up in Massachusetts, helping my parents age in place. How about helping me to create a stable, loving, respectful environment for myself and my children? And to find myself. Where am I? Who am I? What have I done? What's going to happen? Remember, October is also Emotional Wellness Month, Self-Promotion Month, and I'm Just Me Because Month. Well, I found that you can go back, and things will be exactly the same in a different way. It made sense for me to start at the beginning, revisit old dreams, sing a little in the shower, sing in the choir. Scary. I've been told so often that I'm off key and I can't read music well. Herman talks to us about formatas, and I think about cheese, fromage. But I did it with a lot of encouragement from Dad and support from my alto ladies. And Rebecca takes extra time to sing the difficult alto parts for me because I learn by ear. The Sunday school of my youth has evolved into spiritual studies and Bible class. Mark's probing and challenging questions. Can you say more about that? And the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know. I thought the Bible was full of goody two-shoe types. It's not. It's full of heroes who consist of unusual characters who are pagan prostitutes who are imperfect. As Bethany and Pat would say, they're messy. And God loves them all, and Jesus teaches us to love each other. I'm trying to follow God's way, the lifestyle that Jesus lived and promoted, to do justly, love mercy, and to walk humbly with him. But best of all for me, throughout the Bible, are the words, do not be afraid. And we get to sing those words. Then Lely brought me into the missions committee, which is now called Service and Outreach. The work we do has a positive impact on so many people. And when I would fearfully come up here to make a missions announcement, I could focus on Paul and Cheryl, just getting their nods and smiles gave me the courage to speak in front of everyone. Have you ever been to Allison's house? It's full of color. I went to her house before she fully began to explore and share her artwork, and I saw her bold and fearless use of color. I liked it. Hey, Dad, is it okay if I paint the walls of your house orange, pink, and purple?
I don't think so.
Well, this is a reflection of my increased self-confidence. How many people do you know who have rainbow hair, and not just because it's Halloween? Bruce Warren took the place of Bill Emsley and helped me find a job at his cafe, where I met his amazing wife, Dee Dee. The two of them have shown me so much about what a loving, mature, married relationship can be. In their cafe, every day we burn things, we have to redo them. Sinks overflow. We make mistakes. When a dish crashes to the floor, you can invariably hear Bruce laugh while he's shouting, "Fly, be free!" Not guilt, not chiding, not blaming, acceptance, reassurance, caring. It's called agape, which is love in the Christian spiritual sense. Love that lifts up one another. As if that wasn't enough of a blessing, Jim Brennan offered me gardening work, and I've spent the last 3 seasons trying to keep up with him. When I'm weeding and make a mistake pulling out a wanted plant, he shrugs and says, "Sometimes you need to rip out some of the good to get rid of all of the bad." And he says, "Do not be afraid to make the cut." There it is again. Do not be afraid. He has taught me to embrace and laugh at my faults, my forgetfulness, my errors. No blame, no dismissiveness, no abuse. Reassurance. We're a team, he says. And he sings while he works. And while he never sings a wrong note, he doesn't chide me when I do. Acceptance. Agape. And then there was an art show. I finished a project, and I got an award. But more important to me was the lovely letter I received from Jean Westcott, which detailed uplifting quotes that people had said about my work. Acceptance, appreciation, agape. So many good things happening in this church. All are fully and completely welcome, no matter who we are or where we are on our spiritual journey. No matter our backgrounds, how unpolished we are, how unconventional, how messy, there is love, acceptance, appreciation, reassurance, respect, agape. Do not be afraid. I'm not. I want to thank you all for your important part in my spiritual growth and emotional health.
When lonely feelings chill the meadows of your mind, just think when winter comes, can spring be far behind? Beneath the deepest snows, the secret of a rose is merely that it knows you must believe in spring. Just as a tree is sure its leaves will reappear, it knows its emptiness is just a time of year. The frozen mountain dreams of April's melting streams, how crystal clear it seems you must believe in spring. When angry voices drown the music of the spheres, and children face a world that's far beyond their years, above the darkest sky, the far horizons lie, with all the reasons is why you must believe in spring. You must believe in spring and trust it's on its way. Just as the sleeping rose awaits the kiss of May, so in a world of snow, of things that come and go, where what you think you know, you can't be certain of. You must believe in spring and love.
Indeed, we must. Now, my friends, I invite you to stand and join together in this morning's closing hymn, Love Divine, All Loves Excelling. It is printed in your bulletin. like to thank you once again for being here this morning to share in our community's weekly time of remembrance and reflection and recommitment to God and God's ways. I want to end with some special thank yous this morning. First of all, I want to once again thank Dr. Herman Weiss and Rebecca Shrimpton and the choir. On Wednesday, I emailed Herman, said, I have no idea what I'm going to be able to do Sunday if I'm even here. Could you possibly prepare some extra musical pieces in the event? And basically, on behalf of all of you, Herman essentially said to me, we've got your back. And you did, and I am enormously grateful. So thank you for that. I want to thank Mary Ellen Cook for her remarks earlier this morning. I want to thank Dave Lumsden. Dave, thank you for that reading. And you may have noticed, Dave and I both were in costume this morning in celebration for Halloween. Dave as a shepherd, me as a fully functioning human being. And lastly, and most of all, I want to thank Betsy Nicholas. I want to thank you for the love and the courage that you demonstrated in sharing your story with us this morning. Thank you for that. And so now, my friends, let us leave this sacred space and go out into the world to be the people and the spiritual community that Betsy has proclaimed to us this morning that we are, the people and the spiritual community she believes that we are, the people and the spiritual community that God calls us to be and believes that we can be. People and a spiritual community of agape. Amen.